I'm Susan Chekow-Lusignan, the new Director of Marketing and Program Development for the Friends and Foundation of the Rochester Public Library, and I'd like to welcome everyone to today's Book Sandwiched In review. Following the presentation, you will have the opportunity to ask questions, and we will also have a drawing for the copy of the book. So if you haven't already, feel free to enter your name in the box at the back table. Our thanks go to those who helped fund programs like this through FFRPL, the FFRPL committee members who curate and organize these events, our guest reviewers who graciously share their time and talents, the library staff who help with our setup and production, and the thousands of people who attend throughout the year, both in person and through our variety of live stream and online options. So thank you all for participating. Today's book is Becoming Ms. Burton, From Prison Recovery to Leading the Fight for Incarcerated Women by Susan Burton and Cari Lynn. Consumed by grief following the death of her 5-year-old son, Susan Burton became addicted to drugs, eventually getting arrested and cycling in and out of prison for more than 15 years. Once clean, she founded the organization A New Way of Life, which operates 5 safe homes in LA for formerly incarcerated women and their children. Nicholas Kristof in the New York Times says that Burton's life story is testimony to the human capacity for resilience and recovery. Our reviewer today is Susan Porter, Executive Director of the Judicial Process Commission. The JPC is a grassroots nonprofit organization that supports the rights of all people affected by the criminal justice system and advocates for systemic change. Susan Porter has dedicated her professional career to the JPC and has been with the organization for more than 33 years. Please join me in welcoming her to our podium. Thank you.
So it's so nice to be here and to see a lot of friends. It's great, and I really appreciate the invitation. My name is Sue Porter, and I'm reviewing Becoming Ms. Burton, From Prison to Recovery to Leading the Fight for Incarcerated Women. It's a great book. It's well written, and I enjoyed it completely. It's new. It was published this year. So I'm a reader. I love to read. I enjoy reading biographies and autobiographies that inspire. I'm the longtime director of the Judicial Process Commission, and the 35 years have gone very quickly, but not always easily. JPC has succeeded in some areas, but has miles to go in other areas, and funding our work is always a struggle. Last year was very challenging, and we came very close to closing our doors. So at night, I look forward to sitting in my comfortable chair and picking up a good book to relax. I often go to the quick and light fiction by authors such as Sue Grafton or J.A. Jance. But I also like to read nonfiction works, including biography, autobiography, and history. I recently finished the newly published edited diaries of Dorothy Day, titled The Duty of Delight. Dorothy Day lived in Rochester as a young adult and founded the Catholic Worker Movement, which is still thriving today. The Rochester Catholic Worker and Bethany House, which provides homes to homeless women and their children, and St. Joseph House of Hospitality. They both do fine work, and St. Joe's serves homeless men in Rochester. There are similar Catholic worker organizations in most major cities in and around the United States. Our new Pope has recognized Dorothy Day's work, and she has been nominated for sainthood. So I like both bread and roses. They're essential to my life. And learning about the struggles of our sheroes, Dorothy Day and Susan Burton, gives me energy to continue the struggle. Some of my other secret weapons include organic gardening, a spiritual practice, which covers both yoga and church. Susan Burton is an awe-inspiring and incredible 66 years young African-American woman. She is a contemporary shero, much like Harriet Tubman, although she comes from Los Angeles. I highly recommend this book to you for several reasons. It is well written by a very brave woman who courageously turns her life around. While recovering, a sober Susan then turns back around to give a hand up to other women exiting the criminal justice system. It is an important book because there is not a lot written about incarcerated women by women who have been incarcerated themselves. It is important to know that around the United States, the numbers of women going to jail or prison is on the rise. Finally, it is important to read because many people don't know that most women that are incarcerated were mentally or physically abused. Susan's book will help inform a much wider spread of readers and I hope help us to formulate a compassionate response to addiction and punishment. Her white co-author, Lynn, also hails from Los Angeles and is a journalist and nonfiction author of 3 additional books about strong women. Susan has been recognized nationally for her struggles for restoring basic and human rights to those who have served time, and she's been recognized by Starbucks, and she was awarded the Upstander Award. She was recognized by CNN, who gave her a Top 10 Hero Award, and she was honored by the Open Society Foundation, I believe winning a cash prize of $100,000. The publisher is New Press, a 25-year-old nonprofit organization dedicated to promoting and furthering understanding of the issues of equality and democracy in our country. I had never heard of this press before. This is a comprehensive autobiography organized in a linear fashion, which takes us from her childhood in LA and Watts during the 1950s and 60s to today. The book is divided in 2 parts. The first part about Susan's life and recovery. The second part is about starting the New Way of Life organization and seeking justice for the formerly incarcerated. Susan becomes Miss Burton as she morphs into the respected grassroots advocate and founder of Homes and leaves behind the streets and drugs. Instead of leading slaves northward, Susan provides a different path to freedom in the form of homes for women returning from incarceration and their children. A New Way of Life provides cozy homes to women and their children and guides them to a liberating self-sufficiency. This book is one woman's story about overcoming childhood betrayal and criminal sexual assault, addiction, and incarceration. It is about growing up in Watts in extreme poverty and Susan's firsthand experience with the schools, juvenile justice system, probation, the LA police, the courts, the jails, and the state prisons. This is both a deeply tragic story and an inspiring story because of what she does in response to the extreme victimization she experiences. Her trail of tears starts when she was sexually abused for years as a small girl by a family friend. Her mother and dad split when she was young. She was raised by her mom, who had a bachelor's degree from Howard University, but worked as a housekeeper for wealthy whites in Beverly Hills and Malibu. At 5 years of age, Susan was regularly sexually assaulted by a friend of her aunt's. A few years later, she was routinely sexually assaulted by a neighbor for 3 years. He paid her first in candy and food for the family, and then in $100 bills. Susan reports that her mother, who never liked her, made these arrangements. At the age of 13, she was suspended for 2 weeks for wearing a short dress, and she fell behind in school. Previously, she had loved school and had seen school as her refuge. She was a spelling bee champion, a teacher's assistant, and had gotten excellent grades. Shortly after this, she started sneaking out of the house at night and was sent to a juvenile detention center. She was sent to the juvenile facility for a short time and then was released and sentenced to probation. At age 14, she was gang raped while walking home on a Christmas Eve with a girlfriend after a neighborhood dance party. Susan gave birth in a home for pregnant teens. She kept her daughter and moved back home again to live with her mom and her brothers. Susan identified her attackers and testified against them. Her attackers were convicted. Her mother was deeply ashamed about the new baby which Susan brought home. Her mom tried to take Susan back to the juvenile home, but Susan leapt from her mother's car. She left her baby and disappeared to the streets of LA for 3 years. Susan only returned home to visit her daughter when she knew her mother was not home. During this time, she lived with an abusive boyfriend and pimp. On the streets, she worked as a prostitute for 5 years and was arrested and incarcerated numerous times during those years. She viewed the incarceration cycle as simply part of the job. After her boyfriend shot and injured her, she moved back to her mother's house. After working a minimum wage job and barely making ends meet, she quit her job and moved in with a new boyfriend who had money. In 1976, at age 25, Susan became pregnant with her son while they lived in suburban Dayton, Ohio. Her boyfriend's drug use and dealing got her arrested, but she got the best attorney in Dayton and ended up with a fine. She returned to Los Angeles and had a job in her own apartment, but when her 5-year-old son was crossing the road, he was run over and killed by the Los Angeles police. This horrific loss of her 5-year-old son led to a lengthy cycle of addiction and reincarceration. Susan notes in the dedication, What We Should All Know, that most women trapped in the justice system have experienced mental, physical abuse, or sexual assault, and that women of color are disproportionately represented in our criminal justice system. This book provides an up-close and personal story about the gross injustice, the racism, and the massive inhumanity of the California criminal justice system, from probation to incarceration in jails and prisons and parole. Unfortunately, New York's system is not much better, although fortunately New York never passed a 3 strikes law or the food stamp ban for felony drug offenders. Finally, at age 46, and after decades of drinking and drugging, she entered a high-end residential treatment program called Claire in Santa Monica, California. Susan finally got the help that she so desperately needed. Her brother paid for her stay, and while there for 90 days, she detoxed and began going to AA and got a sponsor named Leslie. This time, she was seriously making changes in her life. Her recovery was based on bottoming out. She was seriously ill when she went in for treatment, and she received the supports, and she added supports to her life, including AA and Leslie, her sponsor and lifelong friend. She also attended several classes taught by Dina Crowder about identifying your purpose and meaning in life and establishing life goals. Susan moved into her daughter's home and attended AA and meetings 3 times a day. Her sister-in-law helped her get a job as a companion aide. She loved her work as a companion to seniors, and her business grew, and she was able to save $11,000. Susan and her sister-in-law and a friend purchased the first house in Watts in 1998. That same year, Susan enrolled in community college and took night classes. Susan now holds a master's degree, by the way. The remainder of the book describes the 5 sober homes she created for women and children returning from incarceration and the extensive reentry agenda that she and her colleagues pursued. The program at the homes includes mandatory nightly meals together with a check-in and sharing of the day's events. Regular morning meditation and goal setting are part of the routine. Susan has experienced many God moments, times when unexpected help has arrived. Right after starting the first house and prior to becoming a nonprofit, she obtained a contract from Walden House for $35 a day for each woman who was housed, and was approved to enter any women's state prison to do outreach work. One year she spoke at the banquet for Claire, the treatment program that saved her life, and connected with a generous philanthropist who donated a new van and $10,000 annually. Bed Bath & Beyond annually donates dozens of huge truckloads of essentials so that the homes may regularly be furnished with new towels, sheets, and blankets. A $50,000 grant from the California Wellness Foundation was received at a low point in funding. But really, it's true grit and backbone that are part of Susan's formula for success for a new way of life. The first year, no one was paid. Often during a bad year, Susan would forgo her salary. Her sponsor and lifelong friend, Leslie, helped finance a home. There are many differences between California and New York state laws and justice system. California for years followed the lead of President Clinton and went along with a U.S. law that banned women and men convicted of drug-related felonies from receiving food stamps. California also had a 3 strikes law that caused thousands of women and men to be incarcerated for life for minor crimes such as petty larceny. One of the most surprising things that I learned about is the Ban the Box movement, which actually Susan was instrumental in helping to formulate in California. I also learned that a New Way of Life staffed a large legal project that provided services to women and men to prepare applications for a certificate of rehabilitation, much like the services that Judicial Process Commission provides. I thank you for this opportunity to review the book. I hope you all are able to read it as well. Crystal, would you like to come up and say a few words? Okay. So I've asked Crystal White and Chantel Nilsson to come with me today. And Crystal White is a student at SUNY Brockport and also works and donates about 10 hours a week at the JPC office. She also read the book. Welcome, Crystal.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me here today. I'm just going to touch on a few subjects as Ms. Porter explained about. In minority families, usually it's a hush-hush game. What goes on in our house stays in our house. So, like Ms. Susan explained about the book, when Ms. Burton was molested at the age of 6, her aunt told her, "You better not say anything." And for years, she had to hold on to that tragedy and that stress and that trauma which happened to her within herself. That at those ages where people are mentally affected like that and sexually abused like that, they carry that with them for the rest of their lives. That's what usually draws them to try to get away. That's why drugs come into play a lot and things like that. You feel like you have no outlet. No one is there for you. So she had to go through this on tragedy on top of tragedy on top of tragedy, losing her son, getting raped at a young age, having a kid at that age, and she was going to give the kid up, but end up keeping the kid, and her mother raised her. That draw disposition between her and her child, because while she was out in the street trying to deal with those inner demons of what happened to her in her past life, her child was also being raised by a grandmother who, like she explained, didn't really care for her. But she didn't care for her due to her actions. And sometimes people look at minority women or women, any type of women who act out in a way of like, oh, why is she acting like that? But usually it's something inside that somebody has to connect with and pull out and help them deal with that is causing these behaviors. And it's a cycle. When you don't get help for something, it becomes a cycle. And that's why I appreciate JPC for everything they do, because they're Miss Burtons of New York. If it wasn't for JPC, I wouldn't be standing here right now. JPC offers an outlet. They help you clear your record, by providing you with something that's called a certificate of relief. That helps you when you have to explain yourself. Even though ban the box is prominent here, you still have to admit to your wrongs. By having your certificate of relief, it's saying that I'm rehabilitated from my past, and we need that. No one wants to keep reliving their past, especially if you make a mistake, you've done your time, you want to do right in society. There's also those barriers that society will not let you do better. So where does that leave these women? That's why the recidivism rate with women, now men, is so prominent, because there's, like, you've done your time, you're trying to do better, where's the help? But then people judge you based on your past. So with the certificate of relief, it offers you that, say, hey, I went through the channels, clergy, the New York State, they cleared me of my wrongdoings. Yes, I did it, but I'm also rehabilitated. So it holds some type of weight with us to say, hey, here I am standing today, not in my past, but looking for my future. And I also have this as another supplement for that. Also, like Miss Susan was saying about the book, is when the fathers leave our homes, like she said in the divorce, there's always some type of bitterness. I don't know if anyone has been through divorce, but if you know of anybody or been through it yourself, you know that it's a breakup. It's a loss. Someone is leaving what you know. Her father left her at a young age, where women need a man to show them how a man is supposed to treat them, and then the mother took out her anger for the father on her, which trickled down to her child, which she had to raise, and then by her father not being in the home, she found men that were just as evil as the man who was taking advantage of her, molesting her as a young. So after one abuse, there's another abuse, and here's the circle of life going on. So where is that outlet? It's always a barrier put in front of you. So I'm just here today just to say that we need support in this world. People do wrong, everyone. Some people get caught, some people do, but we need more support out here for people in the inside. Anyone can dress, we have programs out here that will help you find a job. Yeah, anyone could dress up the outside, but we need people to help us to clear up our insides, to help us through such trauma. It's like PTSD in another sense and form. It's still a mental break. And people wake up, imagine the ages of development. 6 years old, she had to find out about sex. 6 years old, someone was forcing themselves on her. 14 years old, the cycle repeated itself, where a baby now was born. Now you have to be 14. Instead of going to prom or homecomings with the rest, you have to have changed diapers, be up at 3 and 4 in the morning. And some people don't even finish school. So for her to go on in life and make her something out of herself despite her past shows a lot about anyone can change, So if there's any type of judgment, don't judge people's past. Look at their futures. I can speak because I have had a checkered past, and now I'm a 4.0 student at the College of Brockport in social work. I'm trying to give back. I'm not trying to look backwards. But when you put people in a position that all they have to do is look backwards, it's easy to go backwards. Those drugs are waiting. In the book, she said when she got off the bus the many times throughout her 15 years, right around the corner was prostitution, a pimp waiting, a drug dealer waiting. The evilness is always waiting to pull us back into the hole, into the tunnel. But she became that outlet, that shining light at the end of the tunnel. She started counteracting that by meeting those women when they got off the bus, saying, hey, I have a place for you. I will feed you. I will clothe you. I will help you walk through, get you counseling, whatever you need. And that's what we need. We need those counteractions, because it's easy. As you guys can see, even driving through here, they've cleaned up, thank God, downtown, very much so. But if you hit a certain corner, it's there. Prostitution is still very much alive. Drugs are still very much on your street. It's even spreading into the suburbs, as you guys can see now with the heroin epidemic. So we need those counteractors. The evil will always be there waiting for us, but we really need those people like yourself that are showing interest. Read the book so you could get a deeper insight, and we need those people to counteract and help us to proceed to our future so that we don't have to go back to our past, because in all actuality, it's the fight or flight and it's survival. If all you know is, everyone has to eat. We all need water. We all need food. We all need air. And if we're not provided with a way to provide those things for us, we will go and sell our bodies. We will go and sell our drugs. And those evilness and all of that pain and hurt, it will manifest. So then you want drugs again, just to leave whatever is inside of you behind. And sometimes that's what people are doing, drugs and things like that, because they're trying to find an outlet. The pain of the past or the pain of the trauma of which they have went through is festering inside of them. They can't get over it. You wake up, imagine 6 years old. You can't fend for yourself, being hurt like that, constantly being beat up by a boyfriend, a pimp mentally telling you you're not worthy. You go out there and make my money for me. You know, when you're the one out there putting your life on the line, getting beat up, like, you wake up and you really, that thing, it starts to play in your head. You really start believing that. So we need people to show us that, no, you're a good woman, you're a good man, you're worth it. You know, so that's all I have to say on the subject. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the ladies to pull the name for our drawing.
Okay.
For the book.
We have Michael Argumen. Oh, Michael. Okay.
Yeah, so we have a few minutes for questions. We'd love to hear from you. Yeah, Gary.
So, who issues the certificate of relief? What authority does it have? And what's the process by which somebody gets that? Who oversees
Yeah,
it?
you take it.
Okay.
What gives it any credibility?
So through the JPC, Camilla Wallace is the head of that program. And what you would do is you would set up an appointment with her. You would have your fingerprints taken, whether it's federal or local, which is state. Once your fingerprints come back, we will sit down with you and go over your convictions. To each court, say for instance, you have Henrietta, Brighton, we write to each court. We fill out an application of certificate of relief. We write to each court, but there's also homework on our part. We have to show certification. So say for instance, I had to bring in all of my awards from being a 4.0 student, anything I've done in the community. You have to have the minimum of 3 people to reference and say how you have been rehabilitated, and write how you have been rehabilitated. You know, what you did in the past. You have to own it. You have to own it. It's by no means a way out. You have to own what you've done. You write about it, and you say how you have proceeded from there. Once that information goes through to the court, there's a judge that will most likely sign off on it, and also clergy, which comes from Albany. They call you, they interview you, and they interview your references. Once they put all of that combined together, they come up with a decision. And most likely the answer is usually yes, and then you will be handed a certificate of relief for each of your convictions.
Yes.
What is the Ban the Box program?
So, what is the Ban the Box? So what it is it's a grassroots movement from involving people all over the U.S., but many communities have passed the legislation, and Rochester passed Ban the Box legislation. And what it does is it gives you a better chance at a job, because, for example, what it says is that they can't, so you have to go and talk with them and make your application, but they can't deny you the job until, they can't deny you the job immediately. And that's what often happens. They have to sort of give you a second chance at that interview. So you don't have to, in some professions, you don't have to reveal the history of convictions, and you get a chance to then maybe get an interview. So it's a small step, but it's an important step. We did pass it here in Rochester, the city of Rochester.
Can I say something on
Yeah.
that too? So prior to the Ban the Box, usually an employer, when they get your application, they will see, the first thing they look at is, have you been convicted? Once convicted, you go into the garbage can. So by them banning the box, they actually see the person before the conviction. So you're able to sell yourself by having that interview and saying, hey, yes, although you still have to disclose, yes, you may get the job, and then you have the choice. At least they get a chance to like you on paper, and like you physically without, judgment prior to even meeting you. You get that meeting stance. And then once you could say, hey, yes, and then like I was explaining about the certificate of relief, I also have been fully rehabilitated, and here's my certificate of relief. And it also, the certificate of relief holds stance because usually in the medical field, you cannot work if you have a conviction. The Department of Health you would be diminished from the job. But with the certificate of relief, all you have to do is send a certificate of relief into the Department of Health, and you're free to continue on with your job if your convictions come back.
What does JPC offer people that's incarcerated? How do you help people that's incarcerated, and how do you help us when we get out of incarceration?
So the question is, what kind of services do we provide to women that are in the county jail? Yeah, and so we have a program called New Journey, and what we do is each year we work with about 55 women pre and post release. These are women that have been identified as high risk for returning to jail, or moderately high risk, or even medium risk for returning to jail. They've been identified by the jail staff, and then JPC offers a mentor, we offer a therapeutic support group, and we offer one-on-one counseling services as well. So it's really quite an extensive program. The women involved have to have children age 12 and under. So, and they are referred by the jail staff. Yep.
And also they provide the mentor service where once a week you get a visit from your mentor until the day that you actually come out of jail. So that mentor speaks with you every week and helps you to basically whatever your needs, what do you need when you get out that can stop you from coming back to this jail? What can we do to help? And then sometimes it's housing, sometimes it's supplemental income, like maybe Social Security, depending if they have a disability, food stamps, Rochester Works, trying to help you find a job, and so forth.
Yes. Go ahead.
How often do the women get to see their children under 12?
I could say.
Yeah. So, well, so the question is, how often do the women get to see their kids? It really depends on the family and what they're able to do. It could be as often as once a week, but it's up to the family.
And that's another thing too. I didn't want to take a lot of time. I was trying to touch on it, but that's another thing that Ms. Burton in the book also explained. Usually when people go to jail, out of mind, out of sight, they're forgot about. And sometimes even if you want to be there for your family members, they're sent off to prisons that's like 2 hours away. Your children are left with a grandmother, most likely, or auntie, and things like that, who have to now provide for your kids, not even retire, and sometimes don't have transportation, so they depend on public transportation, which no buses go out to the prisons. If you're local, you may have a chance, but if you're sent off to a prison that's 2 and 3 hours away from your family, you may not get a visit until someone such as Ms. Porter or a mentor comes in to see you, other than the regular inmates. So that's another thing. Inmates become your family now.
The question is our program working with people that have been released from the jail or the prison? So our New Journey program is specifically in our county jail. And the program that Crystal was talking about, that helps people with, we call it the Legal Action Project, helps people prepare the certificates of relief or good conduct. That is a very diverse in terms of the population that we serve. So it could be somebody out of jail 2 months. It could be somebody who hasn't been incarcerated in 10 years, or even, we've seen even 20 years. So that's very mixed in terms of incarceration.
And also we cater to both males and females. So as we were saying, is that females, depending, they could have been in prison before. You know, there is a waiting limit that the actual clergy wants to see that you're out here actually trying to do better for yourself, actually in rehabilitation on the outside, not just the inside, before you can actually fill out that application. So we have people from all walks of life, men, women who have done 10 to 15 years in jail to 5 days in the county jail, and all convictions, not to put anyone's business, but whether you're a sexual predator, robber, murderer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We don't discriminate.
Yep, way in the back.
Do you help people with the parole process? Do you help people prior to them getting out, coaching them so that they'll be able to do the right type of interview when they're going before a parole board,
So,
or anything regarding parole reform in the state? Because the parole system is pretty broken in New York.
yeah. Well, our funding is very limited. And so we really can't, there's about 4,000 or 5,000 women and men that are released each year. And that's from the county jail and the state prisons and the federal prisons in our area. And so we really have to focus, and we've chosen to focus on the county jail.
But what Ms. Camilla will do is work with your parole officers. So in the case that we cannot get, say for instance, if you're not in the scope of time for us to put in the application, Ms. Camilla could refer you to your probation or your parole officer, who could also advocate for you on the behalf of your certificate of relief. So we do try to work with them and try to talk on your behalf to your parole officer through our programs.
Yes.
What portion of the people who get certificates are successful in changing their behaviors forever? Good for you.
I am a soul. Listen.
90%?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, we have a high percent rate.
Yeah. So we also don't have the funds really. I mean, we do track some of our clients, especially with the New Journey program, because we're working intensively with our women. But for our legal action project, because we see several hundred, probably between 200 and 300 people annually in that program, we would need two staff to help us track everybody that we serve. We just don't have the funding to be able to do that. Our entire budget for a year is about $200,000, and we have 2 full-time employees and 3 part-time. So, and we no longer have AmeriCorps workers because they're in the schools now, and we no longer have Mennonite workers either, because they have the Mennonites have an equivalent program to AmeriCorps, but they are only now in the major cities. They're no longer able to afford to be in Rochester. So, yeah.
I'm an intern for Ms. Camilla, so I take, sometime I do the phone calls, and usually about 90% of the women who I talk to are employed because of the certificate of relief, usually off of DSS and self-sufficient, and also haven't gotten in trouble like myself since 2007, just putting that out there. Yeah, so they have longevity as far as not being in any more trouble, since then.
Yeah, so it's a crazy quilt of funders. We have a small contract with the county for $10,000. Rochester Area Community Foundation has been very good in supporting us. Some of the churches and faith organizations support us, but it's very. We have some private individuals, generous private individuals that give us probably about $40,000 or $50,000 annually, but it's very diverse.